I saw a movie in the theaters! Yeah. I don't really know what to do here because I think I've gotten so used to doing scripted stuff now that I can't really do, raw thoughts normally anymore. But yes, finally, after a good 2 freaking years, I finally went to see a movie in the theaters. Because my local View, which is where I normally see where I normally saw the newest movies, it was finally legitimately safe to go there. I finally felt comfortable actually going to see a movie, and as you can gather from the title, talking about Suicide Squad, and this is just raw thoughts. It's gonna be filled with spoilers. That's the main thing I want to get out of the way right now. It's going to be filled with spoilers, and sorry if I do tend to ramble. I didn't really write down notes for this one as much as I normally do when it comes to shows or movies I watch. But yeah, the new Suicide Squad movie, directed by Guardians director James Gunn, after he was unceremoniously fired from Disney, only to be rehired again to direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Looking forward to that, by the way. And this is kind of a sequel, kind of a reboot to the first Suicide Squad movie, which, quick thoughts on that one. It hasn't aged well. That much I can definitely say about the first one, especially, with, recent information from, the director David Ayer, where he says, pretty much none of what we saw in the theatrical cut or even in the later released director's cut on Blu-ray was actually his vision. So, yeah. I'm not going to seriously start a campaign of release the Ayer cut because I've had enough of the whole release the Snyder cut hashtag for a good 4 goddamn years before that eventually came out. And yeah, I like the Snyder cut, but I still thought it still wasn't the right thing to do to just, coerce the producers to just release a version of the Justice League movie. I would like to see David Ayer's actual vision for the Suicide Squad, but I'm not going to campaign for it. No, because that just results in more toxic fanboys. Anyways, alright, The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn, and I'm going to refer to it as such because, it has the in the title. I think it's a good movie. It's definitely better than the first one. And a lot of the problems with the first one could easily be, just chalked up to studio interference, because that was at the point where DC were trying to play catch up with Marvel when the Suicide Squad was basically DC's answer to Guardians of the Galaxy, right down to the, large cast of colorful characters, the focus on neon and pastel color schemes, the bizarre soundtrack, even if none of them actually fit contextually with the Suicide Squad. I mean, yeah, maybe that first detail, but not the neon and definitely not the bizarre soundtrack. That's not... I don't normally associate Suicide Squad with Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks, is all I'm saying. Still, we got the sequel, and only a few of them actually came back for them. Actors from the first Suicide Squad movie actually came back for this one. Obviously, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. They got Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. Kinnaman's acting seems to have at least improved in this movie. I've never been a big fan of Kinnaman as an actor. Then again, I can't really think of many people who have. Obviously, Viola Davis is back as the biggest bitch in the DC universe, Amanda Waller. And Jai Courtney comes back for a Captain Boomerang cameo. And I'm calling it a cameo because, yeah, I'm getting into spoilers right now. Boomerang's one of the first to die. Like, he turns up, and then he turns up, because, okay, I'm about to get into the story right now. The squad has been assembled to go to the warring micronation of Corto Maltese, and I have a feeling I'm mispronouncing that, and I apologize ahead of time, but I frankly do not care. In Corto Maltese, they're trying to infiltrate a Nazi Germany science facility called Jotunheim, because Nazi Germany was really big on Norse mythology, and they try to retrieve, basically get in contact with the head scientist of the place, the Thinker, played by Peter Capaldi, to basically break in and get the information that they need. because Jotunheim is housing a biological life form, but basically something called Project Starfish, which is in fact a biological life form from outer space, which the Thinker has affectionately nicknamed Starro the Conqueror. It's literally a giant sentient starfish who obviously wanted to conquer the planet when it landed on Earth 30 years prior, only to be obviously to be taken in and tortured as a guinea pig, essentially. And yeah, this is all information we learn more or less during the last act of the movie. Like we knew about Starro within the first act. We knew that Peter Capaldi's the Thinker was somehow tied to it, but we didn't know how it was tied to it. But back to the main story. Essentially, because what Waller does with the new squad in this movie, which again has Flag, Harley Quinn, and Boomerang back. It's like she has them separated into two teams without either of them knowing that there's a second team, except for Flag. I think they hint he either did know and just chose to ignore it, or he didn't know, hence he was still a victim of Amanda's manipulations. Which, yeah, it sounds about right for both Rick Flag and Amanda Waller. And the first team, consisting of obviously of Harley, Flag, Boomerang, a marksman called Blackguard, an alien warrior called Bongal, a mutant weasel called Weasel, and a technology manipulator called Savant, played by Michael Rooker. Yeah, make all the Yondu jokes you want. They're basically there as the distraction, and they don't know that they are the distraction. And a majority of them are killed. Like, Weasel's the first one to die because he's literally a mutant weasel. He's like, he drops into the ocean and just instantly drowns. Then Blackguard gets shot in the face. Bongal is burnt alive and there was also an explosion from her being burnt alive. Ends up killing an already heavily wounded Captain Boomerang. Oh, and there's also two other characters I forgot to mention. Nathan Fillion's TDK, otherwise known as the Detachable Kid, aka Arm Fall Off Boy. Yes, that is a character for the comics. He ends up dying. And Javelin, whose gimmick is that he just throws a javelin. Though we never get to see that because he's gunned down pretty much immediately. So the only survivors of that are Quinn and Flag. Though we do see like a pre-credit scene, I guess you could call it that, where Weasel just coughs up the water and then walks over to the now deserted beach of Corto Maltese. Meanwhile, you have a second group led by Idris Elba's Bloodsport. He is in prison because he put Superman in the hospital with a kryptonite bullet. How he got that bullet, how he was able to friggin' shoot Superman, not made clear, but I think that is a thing from the comics where Bloodsport actually did do that to Superman. Like in one of the first encounters, he actually put Superman in the hospital with a kryptonite bullet. Again, not entirely certain if that's how it happened in the comics. I've never really read the Suicide Squad comics, but if it is, that's a nice little nod to his comic book counterpart. Then you have the second Ratcatcher, who is the daughter of the first one, and the first one I think died of an overdose. I think that's how they explain her backstory. And obviously she has like this little like torch device that she uses to control a massive army of rats, which also plays into the finale of the movie. Then there's John Cena's Peacemaker. He's an extremist patriot, and you know, as James Gunn and John Cena explained, he's basically an asshole Captain America. He's literally Captain America without any of the morals. So he's ultimate Captain America then. Let's see who else. Then you've got the Polka Dot Man. Yes, there is a character called the Polka Dot Man. His superpower is that he launches energy polka dot shaped energy projectiles. I think in the comics there were like a bunch of gadgets themed after polka dots. I don't know if they were actually superpowers. Though in this story they explain that he was a test subject of his presumably sadistic mother. I say presumably, as we don't really get too much details of his backstory. where she apparently pulled a bunch of trans-dimensional energy and funneled it into him, so he needs to barf up that energy like twice a day, unless he has like a power inhibitor around his neck. And he's played by, if I just bring it up, because I've got the wiki right here. Where is he? David Dastmalchian. I'm certain I'm mispronouncing that, but I recognize him from the Ant-Man movies. He's one of Scott's friends. He's like, I think he was like the hacker of Scott's three idiot friends. I call them idiot friends because that's what they are. They are friggin' idiots. Oh, right. Ratcatcher 2 is Cleo Cazo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And she also has a little pet rat named Sebastian, which I thought was adorable. And finally, we have my favorite character in the movie, King Shark, with the bodywork done by Steve Agee, who was the big neck-bearded guy from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's the one who wears the goggles, has the really thick beard. And voiced by Sylvester. And, you know, King Shark, he's voiced by Sylvester Stallone. And I just love King Shark in this movie. It's my first proper introduction to more or less a more comedic King Shark, because he's supposed to be like this human-shark hybrid who, you know, isn't exactly all there. He has basically the mind of a child, but obviously the killer instincts of a shark. And yeah, I just love the vocal work done with King Shark in this movie. He had, like, you know, just with Steve Agee, they explained that they wanted to give King Shark pretty much a dad bod instead of a traditional hulking, muscular, monstrous type of look. I think they were originally going for his if I take a look for his yeah, they were originally going to use the Hammerhead design for the comics, but because of how awkward a Hammerhead design is, they just went with the white shark design he has in the Harley Quinn cartoon. Though again, that much apparently is pretty much just a coincidence, since both the Harley Quinn cartoon and this movie was produced around the same time. So yeah, that's basically the whole team. A majority of them are dead within the first 5 minutes. Blackface gets his face shot off. Bongo burns to death. Boomerang, he dies with a helicopter explosion. Javelin is just shot down. Fall Off Boy is shot down. Weasel drowns, not really. And when Savant tries to run, because they establish he's a coward, they blow his head up for disobeying orders and getting away from the mission. Whereas Harley is taken prisoner, and Flag ends up running into the jungle before he is saved. I don't know if he's still with Enchantress in this movie. Be weird if he was, especially considering what happens to him at the end, but I'll get to that later. Then the rest of the movie is basically them trying to catch up with each other, meet up with each other, get the Thinker to, get them into Jotunheim, and to, they believe they're just getting the information they need according to Matisse, because it all is a rogue nation. But near the end of the film, Thinker reveals that the research done with Starro, because Starro is capable of launching like these little smaller starfish aliens that can plant themselves on human faces and take control of them, and it can communicate through them as well, and it naturally wants to take over the world, of course, and Thinker has been using those little starfish while torturing Starro on men, women, and children, all within the facility. They basically had their free will taken away, and there's no way to free them, because once, it's kind of like what happens when a facehugger grabs onto you in Alien. Like, as soon as it's on you, that's it, you're doomed. And the Thinker was assigned to deal with this because Corto Maltese and the United States government have been working together on Project Starfish. Which, Peacemaker is happy to point out is an asshole analogy. An assalogy. Yeah, I had to go there. And for the most part, it is basically balls to the wall, gory action violence. And more often than not, we do get to see a lot of the character strengths. Obviously, Ratcatcher using her rats, Bloodsport and Peacemaker are kind of like have a rivalry thing going on because both are very similar. Raised from a very young age by incredibly abusive father figures to be expert marksmen. But in the case of Bloodsport, Bloodsport wears an armor that if he can take certain pieces off and reconfigure into different types of weapons. He can use like stuff like sniper rifles and pistols and giant missile launching cannons, which I think is his abilities in the comics. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to. Okay, so yeah, the character in the comics does have the ability to just manifest different weapons. Okay. And Gunn described Bloodsport as an unsentimental portrayal of the 1960s action hero like Steve McQueen without the moral repercussions of those characters, which makes sense. He's a hitman who shot Superman, put him in the hospital. Oh, and in this movie he has a daughter, and I wonder if this is a carryover from Deadshot, because Will Smith was originally going to come back, but he said no, he had other projects to do. So they got Idris Elba instead, but rather than just have him play Deadshot, they just changed it to Bloodsport, and I felt that was for the better. There wasn't really much to Deadshot in Suicide Squad. We had that thing with his daughter, and that's why I think that's a carryover from an early draft of the script. Though the relationship between Bloodsport and his daughter is much more antagonistic. Like the first conversation they have is when apparently Bloodsport's daughter tries stealing a smartwatch. I assume it's a smartwatch. That's they describe it as a watch you can watch your TV programs on. Which that does sound like a smartwatch. And apparently Bloodsport is less concerned is seemingly less concerned that that she stole something, but rather the fact she didn't have any backup, and they get into a shouting match. And Bloodsport basically reveals that he didn't want a daughter. That kind of thing was forced on him by the now dead mother. But a lot of it is because he believes he doesn't have any good in him left. He does legitimately care about his daughter, but he doesn't feel like there's anything good about him. He's a gun for hire who put a superhero in the hospital. So really the fact that is kind of his character arc, more or less, showing that he's not entirely bad. He's just more so morally gray, because I don't think he's ever established that he's ever shot women and children, as far as I can tell, which makes a good contrast to Peacemaker, because he is an out-and-out asshole, which the movie does not justify in any way. They say they pretty much point out he's a patriot, but he's an asshole. Like, a supreme asshole. Let's see. A ruthless, jingoistic killer who believes in achieving peace at any cost. Yeah, that's basically how I would describe Peacemaker, if I knew what jingoistic means. Jingoistic is nationalism in the form of aggressive and proactive foreign policies, such as a country's advocacy for the use of threats or actual force, as opposed to peaceful relations in order to safeguard what it perceives as its national interests. Okay, so racist, basically. The dude is a racist, and yet there's actually a joke kind of like that at one point in the movie where they wake up in the middle of the night because King Shark is about to eat Ratcatcher without her knowing, and they do joke about the fact that she's kind of a heavy sleeper. And when they wake up, they also see that Peacemaker is in his underpants, and Bloodsport calls him out as tidy whities, and Peacemaker just says, "That's racist," which. Okay, I do like those kind of jokes, because I don't know what to say. I like those kind of jokes because I guess it's most of the visual of big fucking hulking John Cena wearing tidy whities. Well, of course, it's obviously disgusting. It's meant to disgust the audience, but it still gets a giggle out of us because of how it's basically like one of the what the fuck kind of moments. I'm trying to think. well, it happens in the movie. But yeah, it is basically the group trying to meet up again with each other to, well, for one thing, topple the corruptive Corto Maltese government, because Corto Maltese is kind of a shithole, and obviously start and get the information that they need. But when they find out that that the American government has had a hand in Project Starfish, at the end of the movie, Bloodsport uses that as a bargaining chip, essentially, to basically say to Waller, either you let us go, or we let this out to the press, and you go to fucking prison. So, which kind of goes against with Flag's wish of wanting to release it to the press. Though, that would be kind of hard for him to do, because when Flag learns of this information, Peacekeeper fucking kills him. Like, straight up kills him. They get into a fist fight, while Starro is escaping. And although first Flag gets the upper hand, but then he gets stabbed right through the heart with a piece of debris from Peacemaker. So, and Flag's dying wish was to have this information released to the press to let people know that the U.S. government has. Well, it is kind of their fault that this whole thing is happening. Because the reason they wanted Jotunheim and Starro destroyed is of the Corto Maltese political family in charge of the place being publicly executed. The said family was fully aware of Project Starfish, fully aware of what was going on with Starro. So should the information get leaked to the public that the American government was basically trying to cut ties with essentially a terrorist country, and they had their hands on a biological super weapon that could easily wipe out the entire population of the planet. Yeah, that kind of thing would screw him over. No, but that is basically the overall plot of the movie. Obviously, they defeat Starro at the end. If I remember right, Starro was a Justice League villain, not really something the Suicide Squad would fight off against. And that's the kind of thing these movies are missing. The Suicide Squad aren't there to take down big hordes of supervillains or anything like that. The Suicide Squad or Task Force X rather, they exist to deal with international threats, or threats to the interests of the American government. Which, yeah, that is what they're doing at first. Which, admittedly, is what they're doing at first. The stuff with Starro, it shouldn't actually concern them. They're more just helping stop this tyrannical totalitarian government or totalitarian regime, and to get specific information that could threaten the stability of the American governmental structure. Not that it has much stability nowadays, but that's beside the point. And what else is there? I guess I could just talk about things I enjoyed about this movie. The action was really good. Like, this is one of the problems I had with the first Suicide Squad movie. It did have decent action, but more often than not, it was poorly lit and poorly edited, which is what killed the action scenes in the movie for me, as I had a hard time following what was going on. Like, I couldn't tell whether it was Boomerang who killed one of the mutants, or if it was Deadshot, or if it was Harley, or Diablo, or Croc. Actually, did Croc even do anything in this first Suicide Squad film? No, he didn't. Whereas in this one, it's much easier to see the action even at night, and the editing is much better. I can actually tell what the hell is going on. I can tell who's killing who, especially since they make sure that, like, the remaining heroes at the end, who are fighting up against Starro and his army of Starfish, they make sure they all have vastly different abilities from each other. Obviously, you have Bloodsport, who can make any weapon using his armor. You got the Polka Dot Man with his interdimensional powers. Harley, who earlier in the movie was given the Javelin after, well, the Javelin died. And she more or less uses she more or less improvises on the spot to help fight off the bad guys. Then you got Ratcatcher, who pretty much just uses her armory of rats to take care of everything for her. And King Shark eats things. So I'm glad that they have a bit of visual variety with what the character can do, as otherwise, in the first film, it was either, unless you had a superpower or a boomerang, you're just using a gun. Like, yeah, we had Katana with her sword, but we barely got to see that. Boomerangs most of the time not actually in the action scenes. A majority of the fight scenes also included soldiers who were completely useless. And then of course you got Flag and Deadshot and Harley who all use guns. And yeah, Harley had her back, but she was mainly relying on firearms, and she didn't really do that much hand-to-hand combat stuff. And the only exception to that was El Diablo, who had his fire powers, but again, he spent most of the time not really doing much with them because of his vow of pacifism, essentially. Whereas in this one, I'm glad we got more visual variety with what these characters could do, and the fact that I can tell them apart through their costumes. And keep up, Harley spends pretty much the rest of a good chunk of the movie wearing a dress. So her being able to fight off all these starfish and military personnel, it's impressive. Especially as Margot Robbie really got into the role this time around. And one thing I definitely agree with James Gunn on, they got rid of that, I think she had like a little, monster tattoo along her face. They got rid of that, and thank God for that. I mean, we get it. Harley isn't all there. You don't need a tattoo to remind us. And, same thing with Jared Leto's Joker, but there's a lot of problems with Jared Leto's Joker, not just the tattoos. And I'm glad that they're not just fighting a big grey monster, because Starro, they can make sure to give Starro his proper appearance, a big blue and pink starfish, obviously with the giant yellow eye. So on the action, this is definitely a very, very bloody movie. Like limbs are getting torn off, bodies are blowing up everywhere. The Thinker gets torn apart by Starro and then flung into a window and ends up as this giant red mush. We actually see it basically like one of the Mortal Kombat X-ray things where we see Peacemaker stab Rick Flag through the heart. And then when Peacemaker is shot through the neck by Bloodsport, there's constant blood drizzling out. Then at one point Harley shoots a guy in the chest, and it's just pouring blood. There's a lot of blood in this movie. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of swearing. So yeah, this is definitely going to make it's definitely going to make the people who came for the action and the violence, they're definitely going to enjoy this movie. I also felt that the character interplay in this movie was a lot stronger as well. We got hints of it in the first movie, because I like the stuff between Harley and Deadshot. I respect the stuff they had going on between Flag and Deadshot. And Boomerang had a few good quips. Aside from that, most of the characters were just kind of there to fill in the action scenes, and there wasn't really much interplay. Even on the director's cut, there's very little actual character interplay. Even during that scene where Harley is psychoanalyzing anyone, it's just her making assumptions about the characters based on how they act. Which, okay, I'm glad they tapped into that, since she qualified or not, she is a psychiatrist. But aside from that, there wasn't much in terms of character interplay. A lot of it was either Deadshot talking, or Harley talking, or Boomerang making quips, or Flag giving exposition. Really bad exposition as well. Oh god, I'm gonna have to wrap this up because the batteries on this thing's almost dead. But yeah, in this film, character interplay much stronger. Because we get good funny lines between the characters. We get to see them sharing their backstories, Polka Dot Man being a weapon, or Ratcatcher 2 growing up with her dad and how he was a loving father until he died. So yeah, I like that kind of character interplay because it helps build more of the camaraderie. Especially Ratcatcher 2 and King Shark. They were adorable. I loved watching them on screen together. So James Gunn's Suicide Squad. Yep, I recommend it. I think it is a legitimately good movie. Definitely better than the first one, which isn't really high watermark because of how divisive the first one is. But, it's a fun popcorn movie, which is exactly what I feel like Suicide Squad should be. It shouldn't be this in-depth look at the character's psyche. It should be what fun, wacky characters going on adventures, and you know, hijinks ensue. So yeah, I'm gonna have to leave it at that because my camera is almost dead. Thanks guys, thank you guys for watching, and I'm sorry for the lack of videos recently. I've only just recently uploaded my Scourge review. Should be getting back to doing reviews eventually, but I don't really have a consistent schedule, so just keep your eye out for videos. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, follow Twitter, etc. And I think that's where we'll leave it. So, until next time, because there always will be one, this is Callum Lewis, the Media Hood, signing off.